everybody. Good to see you. Welcome. This is a special CCATs meeting with our UCSF special guests. I'm going to get started in just a second and share a couple of slides to go over some upcoming Thrive events. And then we'll hand it off to Patricia, who's going to lead us through a presentation that they've created. So let me share my screen. Can everyone see that? Okay, so just very quickly to go over upcoming Thrive events. On March 23rd, Thrive is going to be part of the RISE 2022 Women's Leadership Conference. And so this one is going to be running for office, how and why, for anyone thinking about running for any kind of office like school board, city council, board of supervisors. This will be an opportunity to hear stories from community members who have run for office before and sort of their journeys along the way. And then April 5th, we're going to have another Thrive Resource Room session. And this is a monthly opportunity for nonprofits to hear about nonprofit specific resources, free and affordable tools. And this session will revolve around facility repairs specific for nonprofit buildings. So we'll have someone from Rebuilding Together Peninsula come and discuss how you might be able to participate in free repairs if your facility needs that. And then we'll also have Leadership Council of San Mateo County come in and talk about their leadership opportunities. And then the District 15 Congressional Candidate Climate and Environment Forum is going to be April 6th, 7 to 9 p.m. And this is revolving around the primary election that's being held on June 7th. And these several candidates will be taking Congresswoman Jackie Spears' place at the end of her current term. She'll be retiring. So in this forum, this is going to be an opportunity for candidates to share and discuss questions about the policies that they would support relating to climate change. So things like drought, wildfires, sea level rise, and how they plan to address. And then our next VOC, Voter Education Outreach Advisory Committee meeting is going to be on April 20th. This is a monthly meeting and everyone's welcome. This is going to entail updates on the primary election and our election education toolkit, which I'll talk about in a second. And it'll also be an opportunity to hear an update from the county elections office. And so Thrive and a whole host of other organizations is going to be hosting a series of candidate forums. This is going to be an opportunity to elevate the most pressing issues of nonprofits and their communities in San Mateo County. We also are going to have a toolkit and stipend available. So any nonprofits who are interested in doing voter outreach should reach out to me or us. I'll put my email in the chat. And speaking of, our sheriff candidate forum specifically is coming up on May 12th. And we will have Carlos Balanos, who's the current sheriff of San Mateo County, come and speak, as well as the current chief of police services for the city of Millbrae, Christina Corpus. And this will be a forum dedicated specifically to the sheriff. And so that's it in terms of Thrive events coming up. I'll stop sharing and give it to Patricia, who will lead us through the next portion of the meeting.
All right. Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for being here today. Let me just get my screens in order here. All right. I also, so my name is Patricia Mejia. I'm the program manager for practice coaching and training at the UCSF Center for Excellence in Primary Care. I also want to give our director a chance to introduce herself. So Rachel, would you mind unmuting?
Absolutely. It's wonderful to meet you all. Really appreciate the chance to be with you today. We really appreciate all the work that you all are doing around outreach to your communities. And they're glad for any way we can come in and support. So nice to meet you all, and I'll look forward to the discussion.
Right, excellent. Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, so today's, it's not so much a presentation as much as it is a conversation. So this is designed to be very, very interactive because we want to learn from you, kind of what your experiences are. So there'll be a bit of sharing out back and forth. We're a small group, so I invite you to, whatever you're comfortable with, if you'd like to unmute at certain points and share some information, if you prefer to use the chat, whatever is comfortable for you all. All right, next slide, please. So we wanted to start our conversation. It's really focused on looking at pandemic fatigue as well as burnout. And so when we talk about pandemic fatigue, this is the WHO definition, which I forgot to put credit for them on the slide. I will add that before it goes out. So that is a natural and expected reaction to sustained and unresolved adversity in people's lives, right? This is essentially, we are in year 3 now of the pandemic. So we are talking about kind of this long game experience with a once in a lifetime pandemic that we have no control over, right? So pandemic fatigue is completely normal and actually expected to show up in all of us at this point. Pandemic fatigue also evolves over time, right? Sometimes we might think back to the beginning of the pandemic and some of us might have felt okay, or there might have been pockets in between where we felt fine, and then all of a sudden it comes back. And that is also completely normal. So we're going to dive a little bit more about what this looks like with all of us in this room, thinking about pandemic fatigue in terms of the emotions, the experiences, how we perceive it, and kind of the world around us and how that impacts us as well. Pandemic fatigue is not obviously an American-only thing. It's not a regional-only thing. This is being experienced around the world by folks. All right, next slide, please. So I want to take a moment. So this is the interactive part. This is the conversational part. So please feel free to unmute again or share in the chat. I would like you to think for a moment about pandemic fatigue, thinking about living, now into 3 years of a pandemic that has, we look at, we joke about it as, I've heard folks joke about it as the COVID coaster, right? The ups and downs. But that can be exactly what's the most challenging, right? We get hopeful, feels like things are calming down, and then all of a sudden we're hit with another wave. So what I'd like to do is just ask all of you to share, when you think about pandemic fatigue in yourself and the folks around you, your families, what are some of the emotions that come up? What are some of the feelings that come up here?
This is Gloria. Do you want me to talk or go through the chat box? I'm sorry.
Talking is totally fine, Gloria.
Okay. I think emotionally it's a bit of a roller coaster because I think it all depends on how you look at life and how you've addressed the experiences in your life, because I really felt there was a lot of hope and yet there was a lot of change, as as time went on. We were addressing it, people were pulling together, there was information coming from everywhere. Emotionally, I'm trying to keep it emotionally right, because that's what you're asking. So
excellent.
Trying to keep fear at bay, and yet we have to be very cautious. Yeah.
Excellent, Gloria. Thank you so much. So you've you've kind of touched on a lot of some shared emotions that people in the room might be feeling, that up and down roller coaster, feeling hopeful sometimes and then having that hope go away again. Rachel shared in the chat that she finds herself sometimes to be short-tempered.
Oh, yeah.
and I believe, let's see, Wendy shared that you're feeling hopeful right now. Let's see, and Marianne, don't know what information to believe. Yeah, we just came out of a training with CIs and CTs about, you know, how challenging it is with all the constant changes in the guidance, keeping up with it and feeling like we're doing a good job. Excellent. Anxious for the unknown, but also hopeful. And Gabriella shared restless. Any other emotions that come up for folks that haven't been mentioned yet?
I think for me, it's been also a bit frustrating. Like, I think like Gloria, trying my best to be hopeful for like the good things that are happening, right? Like in my own personal life, like work-wise, or just the good things that are happening in the world. But it's like that inability to see like things in the long term and like just not really knowing what's going to happen, that it's like you're trying to stay present and be hopeful in the present, but it's really unclear like what's coming down or like what's coming our way. So it's hard to plan ahead or to know what we should be planning for. And that is very frustrating.
Absolutely, Gabriella. Thank you so much for sharing that. We don't have control right now, right? We're used to a certain level of control in our lives, and that's out the window right now. So we you know, the thought of planning something, even something small, becomes this really challenging thing. Then just a couple, anxious for the unknown, but also hopeful. And Vicki shared feeling a little bit of the cabin syndrome effect. Vicki, do you want to share a little bit more about what that is for you?
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, I'm feeling like scared to go out of my home or my office or my environment because I'm feeling safety here inside. So this time is confused my feelings.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that explanation. Yeah, feeling safe at home, right? That's where we've all been for a while, and that's where it feels like we have that control. Let's see, Henrietta asked, how would you separate the emotions you would ordinarily feel from those connected with pandemic fatigue? That is a really, really great question, and we're gonna dive a little bit more into that in just a sec. All right, and I think we kind of have a full screen. So why don't we go to the next slide? And Henrietta, I'm so sorry. Let me back up a moment there. Was that a question as in I want a response, or was that like an observation type of question?
No, it was a question requesting a response, because there are many of these feelings we might ordinarily feel at different stages of our lives that we've always felt, you know? So I'm wondering, how would we separate out the anxiety we might ordinarily feel from any anxiety connected with what we're talking about today?
That's a really, really great question. And I do want to put out there that I am not a mental health specialist. And so if there are questions that come up like this one, I don't want to steer you all wrong. What I can do is look up some resources for you. Part of the Virtual Training Academy, we do have a mental health task force that has done some kind of deeper work in these topics. So I'd be happy to share some of those resources with you afterwards. And Henrietta, that is a really, really great question. Because you're right, some of us, you know, come with things like anxiety or sleeplessness, and how are those feelings perhaps being heightened now, or how is it just a continuation, and how do we tell the difference? That's a really, really great question.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah. So kind of moving on, I broke these down into a couple of different things. So the first one is thinking of how we feel about it. And now I want you to kind of think about how it shows up. So when we're talking about things like feeling anxious, or, you know, feeling I feel, you know, I only feel safe in my home, I don't know how to plan ahead. How does that look in our day-to-day life? What are some examples of what that looks like? Go ahead and feel free to unmute or to share in the chat. Gabriella shared in the chat, spacing out. Oh my gosh, I am so right there with you, Gabriella. Happens more often than I'd like to admit. I know for me, one thing is I used to be a master multitasker. Can't do it. I just cannot do it. I can either have a conversation or I can take notes. I cannot do both at the same time. See, Bella shared forgetfulness, disorganization. What else? What else? How else is it showing up for folks?
I would say making decisions. Yeah, you know.
Be a little more, Gloria.
Well, making decisions, like there's so much coming at us and we're responsible to get messages out. You can't give everybody all the messages because it's not going to be processed. It's little by little. And so I think sometimes it's difficult, like, you know, to make those decisions. Is this enough? Is this simple enough? Is this building from what was previously? How can, you know, did they understand? How do you reinforce? You know, so decisions about a lot of messages. If you have the task and the responsibility of getting information out to groups, to your employees, to groups, to leaders, to, you know, where they can understand and build from that. And that's, you know, it's just there's time, a lot of time is wasted on trying to figure out, okay, you know, what is this the best thing to do.
Yeah, so Gloria, what I'm hearing in there is also a little bit of really wanting to do a good job, right?
Absolutely.
It's a big responsibility.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Big responsibility. And how do I make sure that I am providing the information that folks need in a way that they can, you know, take it in? Excellent. Yes. Thank you. And Rachel, I think you've gotten the ones in the chat. So we have decision fatigue, hard to focus, and having less patience. Absolutely. I know also, you know, kind of thinking of like concrete examples of how it's shown up, just thinking in my own family, like planning anything, you know, planning even a small family get together. And does it feel safe? Does it feel safe to have, you know, that cousin come in who we really want to see, but we don't know if they're fully vaccinated yet or not. And so just, you know, freezing up and maybe not making that decision or holding off because we're just not sure what to do.
I like the idea. Forgive
me. Go
me.
ahead, Gloria.
Just in terms of being patient when people are saying, I'm taking a trip, I'm going to this wedding, this concert, this, you know, and they're just like, oh my God, you know, we've got to be patient with people's decision, you know.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, so kind of recognizing that folks are making those decisions for themselves, right? And your role is just getting the information to them, and then they're going to make those choices for themselves. Excellent. And then let's see, less motivated to do things with others or even for yourself, being insecure around others, and decreasing our ability to analyze. Excellent. Right. So I want to kind of, Benny, did you have something to share? I see you.
Yes, I just wanted to share that, you know, as soon as this is that sharing experiences, you know, personal experiences, that as soon as we wake up, we look out from the window, and then when we don't see people, we have that emotion of longing, that you know, we long to see people walking, and then because we don't see people, that's when the pressure, I mean, that feeling of, you know, loneliness comes in, like, what is happening in this world, you know, and they start to wonder, you know. So
yeah,
that longing, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Benny. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, we're social animals, right?
Yeah.
We
animals,
are
right.
built.
Yeah.
We are built to be around other people. All right. And then Phil added trying to find work and life balance. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, so I want us to move after Rachel gets that one in, and we will share slides with you at the end. I kind of want to flip it a little bit. So thinking in your role, I also want to kind of think about, you know, how does this show up in terms of the contacts and the cases, the folks that you are talking with on the phone? How are you seeing the pandemic fatigue hit there? What are some emotions that are coming through? Benny, did you have something?
No, I'm trying to change my filter right now. Yeah.
Ah, no worries, no worries.
Yeah,
No
I
worries.
just came from another meeting. That's why.
No worries. So I know with the work that we're doing with the communities of practice and the Virtual Training Academy, we're hearing from folks that calls are getting tougher, have gotten tougher. Folks are kind of expressing different ranges of emotion. So what is coming up for you on your calls? Colleen?
I don't have calls. We're actually out in person. And I've noticed that there's a lot of emotion like you have there. People are really emotional. People feel helpless. People are finding themselves being more argumentative with friends and family, not, you know, solidifying being in the same side of vaccines and other things. People very frustrated. I've found people being very frustrated with the systems and the organizations that they are trying to work with, or, you know, unable to work, unable to have that emotion, that physical contact that they need with people. And I've noticed a big change in people being able to get out more. You know, when we have people at the farmers market, they're out shopping in the open air and they have their families with them or friends with them, and they see people, and you can see how they change when they start talking to you, when they release the tension that they have, or just are very excited to, isolation. They're not as isolated because they're actually out. And I'll leave it at that. I mean, there's so much more I could say, but there's more people on this call.
Thank you so much, Colleen.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Could you,
Can I
don't mind
share
just one
our
second? I
experience?
need to, I just need to step away for 1 second, if you do not mind. Sorry, it's the world of Zoom at home. Just just give me 30 seconds.
And let me take on over while Pat's taking care of that. Any other emotions this is bringing up for others? And
Yes,
and,
this is
yeah,
Benny from Alquacia. Yeah, during the the peak of the pandemic, we've been calling, getting in touch with thousands of community members, and the first expression that they have is that expression of disappointments about the situation. So they,
what do you mean by
just,
that?
yeah,
Say a little more.
as soon as we call them or they call us, and then we say, how are you doing? Here we are again, we cannot go out, so we cannot do the things that we used to do. So those are the, they're really disappointed about about the situation where everybody was in. So, and then that would be our starting point to give some motivations, not to be disappointed or not to be depressed. So, and then it would go into a very lengthy discussion just to maintain, to keep company with the people. And then after 3-5 minutes of conversations, then they feel better. So at least somebody contacted them or somebody talked to them about the situation. So in a way, it was to our disadvantage, because it was our strategy to educate them or to give them updates about the situation. But going back to that, it's disappointing, like, here we are again. So
yeah. Well, thank you so much, Benny. And it almost sounds like part of what you're talking about is almost grief about things people have lost components people lost in their life. Yeah. Thank you.
This is
Pat,
Gloria.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Thank you so
I'll hand
much,
this back
Rachel.
over to
Go ahead. This is Gloria.
Yeah, I think we have time for one more.
I think that one of the things that show up is a lot of the empathy as well as the responsibility to see how the whole family is doing. And so wanting to ensure that you allow them to express some of the things they need, some of the things that they're giving up on, things that are stressing them out, because we have to also check on their mental health status. It's just overwhelming. So
thank you
the
for
need
that,
to
Gloria.
listen and to empathize.
Wonderful. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you all for sharing this. So one of the things when we look at this list, and the reason I wanted to kind of separate out the two is that the reality is that many of the emotions that our contacts are feeling are very similar to the ones that we're feeling, right? We're all living this pandemic together. And that's what makes the work that you all are doing extra challenging, right? Because you're living the experience while you're trying to support others as they are living through the experience. Again, pandemic fatigue, all of these responses, the pushing back against guidance, the wanting to be over, I'm just going to take my mask off and I'm going to a party because this is year 3 and I am done. That is all normal. As challenging and as frustrating as it can be, if we can keep in our heads that, this is all part of that same wave that we're all riding together, it just shows up differently for different folks. All right, I'm going to skip the next slide, Rachel, because I think we kind of touched on some of these in terms of how contacts are handling it. All right. So we often hear about these two things hand in hand, right? We talk about pandemic fatigue, all those feelings, all the reasons why. And then we also hear about burnout. And there's a really big difference between the two, right? When we talk about burnout, what we're talking about is very, very specifically to our roles, to the work that we are doing. It is also, though, the result of having, being exposed to a lot of stress, prolonged stress, and it can also cause negative physical and mental outcomes. Right, so we're going to talk a little bit about what burnout is, and then we're going to talk about kind of some ways that we can work around, support ourselves through pandemic fatigue and burnout. So with burnout, this is a term that we use a lot in conversation. Oh, I'm feeling burnt out today. I didn't get enough sleep last night. I'm so burnt out, or I'm tired of, hearing this thing over here. I'm burnt out about it. But the reality is burnout, when we look at it as a condition, as a way that people are feeling, it's not something that comes and goes. When you hit burnout, you are at a level where it is just, you're kind of at the end of your rope here. So it shows up in ways of like feeling emotionally exhausted. There's just no more left to give there. Maybe feeling a little cynical, not wanting to, feeling annoyed by things, or that's never going to work. And then lacking in professional efficacy, or feeling like, I don't think I'm doing a good job, or this work felt fulfilling to me and now it's not feeling that way to me. We can go ahead. Sorry, I think I made 2 of the same slide. And we can go one more. And so when we think about the causes, right? So we have pandemic fatigue. That's very clear, right? We're living through this very unique situation. We know what the cause is there. When we're talking about things about burnout, it can be a number of different things happening, right? We already talked a little bit about the fact that we're all sharing in this experience. You all are doing peer support, right? You are living it. And that's a whole different level than a job where you can leave it at the end of the day. where you're not living your work when you come through the front door. Okay, you're worried about your kids, or worried about an elderly family member, or, oh my gosh, I have to get, make that vaccine appointment for my niece who has decided to get the vaccine. Things like Zoom fatigue. We know it is very real. Studies have been done. It's hard to be on Zoom. Our brains were not designed. Maybe we'll evolve if we keep using Zoom after a while, but our brains were not designed to see everybody all at once, to see ourselves on the screen, although I have a workaround for that. I was so happy when a friend of mine showed me the hide self-view option. It was like about a year into the pandemic, and I was like, how did I not know about this sooner? It brings our brains into a level of consciousness and awareness about ourselves that is not normally there when we're sitting in a physical space with people. When I'm in a physical space with folks and I pick up my water bottle to take a sip, I don't really think twice about it. But when I see myself on the Zoom taking that sip, I am very aware, and boy, do I really always make that face when I'm talking? How weird. So Zoom fatigue is very, very real. That lack of separation between work and home, right? For some of us who've been working at home for a prolonged period of time, that computer's right there. You see it every day when you walk past that room, even after hours or on the weekend, right? So having that ability to separate the two, managing our own families and the realities going on there. Hats off, my husband is a third grade teacher, and I could hear him with his kids prior to the school reopening a few months ago. And I would hear the families in the background trying to corral their kids, or trying to get, two different kids in a small space on two different Zooms at the same time. And so I just seriously, so much respect for families, especially those with young children. You all shared earlier, the isolation, not being able to connect with one another. I have a friend who was, really, really concerned at the very beginning, would not leave the house at all. And the first time that she went out on a walk, and she just said that it was like the Wizard of Oz when it goes from black and white to color, when she heard people talking. They were socially distanced, they were masked up, but just hearing voices, hearing laughter, seeing somebody walking down the street just, made her realize how much she needed to get back out there in a way that was safe for her. And then there's a vicarious trauma that you all are, might be experiencing when you're talking to families, reaching out to folks. You guys have that direct relationship, so you're hearing those stories. Folks have either yourself have experienced loss, the folks you may be supporting have experienced loss, and you are taking on aspects of that trauma. And then fear of reopening. What's going to happen? It's that fear of the unknown. Like, we're all excited for it, and then what's it going to look like? So all of these things can cause burnout. I was just saying to a colleague this morning, I'm feeling a little burnt out. I know that's not true. I'm using that term in the way that we use it kind of broadly, right? I'm not burnt out. I still love my job. I'm tired. Looking forward to a week off next week for spring break. Have it marked on my calendar, not going to mess anything up with that. But burnout, again, is very, very specific. Burnout is when you just don't want to go there again, right? There's nothing left in the well. Let me look for something else. Next slide, please. All right. We've talked about a lot of heavy emotions. We've talked a lot about kind of the impact it has on ourselves and the folks that we serve. So let's talk a little bit about what we can do about it. And I wanted to divide this up in kind of 3 different ways to look at this, right? Because there are ways that we can deal with pandemic fatigues, or when we feel like we're kind of getting close to feeling a little burnt out. How can we take care of ourselves? So I would love to open it up and start there. What are some ways that you all take care of yourselves right now? And go ahead and unmute or share it in the chat.
I'm conscientious of getting enough sleep, trying to make
Sleep.
that
Huge.
happen, and exercise.
Excellent, excellent. Laura, thank you so much. And Alberto added walking and Phil added sleep. So yep, you guys are all on the same page. What else? How else do folks take care of themselves?
Self-care?
Veronica. What's an example of self-care for you, Veronica?
Boxing.
Boxing. Oh, my sister in boxing, Veronica. Rachel knows this. I love boxing. Yes, such a great stress buster. All right, let's see. Anahi, and please correct me if I say your name incorrectly. Stretching throughout the day. Oh my goodness, that is I was going to say that is something, but that is like a skill that I want to start incorporating into my life. Not enough stretching, right? Let's see, Vicky, physical activities, stress management, personal plan. I love that. I would love to hear more about that. Meditation, breathing, eating well. Breathing. Zumba, dance, love it, Vicky. Excellent. What else? What else do folks do?
Praying, offering feelings, disappointments to God.
Benny, did you say sharing your feelings and your disappointments?
Yes, lifting up to to God all the worries, so that he.
So you're.
Yeah, prayer.
Absolutely. So your faith, absolutely.
Yeah.
And see, Megan, setting boundaries. I love this. I don't have to answer every email received after 5, 6, or 7 p.m. Love that. That's like a mantra that we all have to like write up and put over our desk. Henrietta, I love this. Positive self-affirmations. We don't do that enough, right? I have a friend, and I know other people have said this before, but I remember a mutual friend of ours was kind of down on herself and was, not being very nice to herself. And my friend looked at her and said, "Why are you being so mean to my friend?" And I thought that was such a nice way to it made her like stop and think, right? Like we all, should be lifting ourselves up as much as we can. So absolutely positive self-affirmations, yoga, reading a book, talking with friends, getting outside, sunset chasing, love it. So this list of self-care, one, I am so happy to hear that it's this long list, and apologies for the small font. I didn't just set this up very well, but we will correct it before it gets sent out. Let's see, Christina, I'm going to read yours before I go on. I like spending time outside gardening in 2020 during the shelter in place and got away from that, but I want to get back to it again. Beautiful, absolutely. One of the things I love about talking about self-care, like sometimes you hear self-care and it's kind of a little eye roll, like everybody goes, yeah, yoga, no, that's not me. It doesn't have to be you, right? Self-care is such a personal thing. And so the most important thing is finding what works for you and recognizing that what works for you today, Tuesday, may not be the thing that's going to work for me 2 weeks down the line, right? But the important thing is thinking through and identifying what are some of those things that might work for me. The sharing is, I always find really fun because then you learn what other people are doing, and maybe it might be like, maybe I want to try Zumba or boxing. And Nayeli, allowing myself to have some time away from my kids. Yes, those breaks, that respite is very necessary. All right. So thank you for sharing all of that. Can we go to the next level? Here he chose a lot of back and forth with the slides. So thinking about teams. So how do you support one another? What are some ways you all support one another now? Or what are some ways you would like to be supported by your team? Either one. Bill F says outings, meal times, that shared time together, right?
Constant communication with each other,
Constant communication.
Yeah.
Vinny, say a little bit more about that.
Oh, yeah. How do I say it? Touching base with each other, with every member of the organization or team, lightens up, the burden. Like, for example, they have been quiet, for more than an hour, and somebody calls them and asks them how they are doing, and then they start venting out, their emotions. And when they hear something positive, then that becomes, a good thing for them. And like, in like manner, if I hear something positive from my colleague, I would say, oh yeah, that's a good thing, then we forget the problem. So.
Benny, I love it. I love it. So I'm hearing a couple of things there, right? The need for those positive affirmations for one another, right? Hearing those. I know in one of our meetings in the Virtual Training Academy, one of the folks running one of our meetings started this new way to start meetings where it's give a shout out to a peer. Yeah. It could be work related, it could be something else, but just acknowledging one another. Yeah, the other thing I heard there, Benny, was like maybe, you all are in a very unique place. So talking to folks who are living your shared experience, right? Being in pandemic response is not familiar maybe with folks who are not doing that work. So sometimes being able to talk to peers who are in the same experience.
That's right. Yeah.
I bet they'll share checking in with each other on how they're doing, peer counseling, validating emotions, walking together. Yes, absolutely.
The first question I would ask my colleagues is, are you in your pajama still? And then when they say yes, I said, can you go to the office with your pajama? And say, oh, definitely not. And then that would change things, And that was one positive.
Absolutely. Although I love it. I love it. I love the humor in it. Although I have to say my husband has been known to walk the dogs and go to the store in his pajamas as much as I talk about it. All right. So then kind of thinking about the next level, and Vicky, I love traveling from the sofa. I love it. Share what works for you. Yeah, right. Giving each other examples of what might help. And then thinking about going to the next level. And this is in recognizing, I come from the nonprofit world. I know that, tremendous work is done by folks in nonprofits with very, very few resources oftentimes, right? So what are some ways, when we keeping that in mind, what are some ways that our organizations, the agencies we work for, what are some ways that folks can get support there? And maybe what I'll do is I'll start with an example. So as I shared, I do come from the nonprofit world and worked for an organization years ago, different but similar in the sense that it was peer-to-peer support. So it was parents of kids with disabilities supporting other parents of kids with disabilities and also doing education and training with parents and professionals. So it was that shared kind of lived experience. And so, again, very few resources, couldn't bring in an outside facilitator to help us out or, a ton of things that we would have liked to have seen. So we just made do with what we had. And what we put into place was the ability to debrief with your supervisor. And it was truly a debrief. So what we set up was that a person could go to their supervisor and say, just had a really tough phone call, and it was their choice. I just need to vent. That was option one. Or I need to tell you about it, and I'd like to talk it through and get some advice. Okay? And whatever the person chose was respected by the supervisor. If they said, I just need to vent it to get it out there, as much as they might have wanted to step in and give some advice, that was not what the person was looking for. So that was respected. And it worked, as simple as that sounds, it actually worked really, really well. The staff felt very supported just knowing that that was an option for them and that whatever was discussed in that space was not going to come outside of that space. What other ways might folks, or do you already feel supported by your organization?
I have to say that I think the partners have offered ideas or suggestions or collaborations with each other, and that's a real a nice thing. It's a really, really good thing, because with more, you can do more, you know, share the resources, share the wisdom,
Absolutely.
share the thought, share the idea, share the practice, share the, you know, so that's
Love that example, Gloria. Absolutely.
Gloria,
You're
are you
going
talking
across
about
the different organizations.
Gloria,
Pardon
are
me?
you talking about the weekly interorganizational sharing that is sponsored, that was sponsored by the county? That was
any of it,
Yeah.
any collaborations, any partnerships in which you say, we can do this, can you help with this, or I can do this for you, and we can share, you know, you just think ideas pop up and those conversations come up. So I think those kinds of things have been real supportive.
Excellent.
Organizational.
And I thank you for that. Thank you for that, Gloria. And I just want to get to Christina's comment in the chat, because I think it's a really important one. So Christina says that they agree with Benny and Alberto, and that back in 2020, we would have check-in meetings with our staff to talk about everything and nothing at all. We got away from that, and I missed that time to check in. Excellent. So that's a great example of, you know, something that doesn't cost much, tap into resources. It's something you used to do. It feels good. You're familiar with it. So having those conversations of, you know, hey, can we start that up again? Even if it's, you know, maybe it can't be the hour it used to be, for example, but maybe we can check in for 20 minutes. And then Maritza, making it okay to ask for help. Huge. That is tremendous. Absolutely. Respecting and understanding individual emotions, offering opportunities to talk, and creating an action plan for the situation as a team. Absolutely. I really, really like that, Vicki. And I want to explore that just for a moment with you. So are you thinking of kind of as follow-up to the conversation right now? It's like, what might you be able to put in place? Is that, am I reading that correctly? And please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. And Vicki, I'm not sure if you are speaking. I know you entered that a little bit ago. All right, well, we will come back to that one. But I think that's a really great suggestion, if I'm reading that correctly, that, you know, we're having this conversation, and then where do we take it from here? You know, what are the things that we can put into place? All right, so one other, any others before we continue? Any other examples? All right. So just a couple of others that come to mind for me. So one is, and I think you kind of tapped on it a little bit when you're talking about the collaboration across the different partnerships, right? Sharing resources. There are a lot of resources out there right now, and I'll put a list together for you and send them over after. But, you know, things like, I don't know if folks are familiar with, just the name escaped me. It's the COVID app. I actually have it on my phone. Find it. I will look for it. It was put together by the VA, and it's a really great app that contains meditations, simple stretches, breathing exercises, all kinds of resources to help you with that self-care. So we can share that with you afterwards. And then the last thing I want to share is just an example. Again, you know, thinking about organizations that maybe don't have a lot of resources to tap into. We've benefited at the Virtual Training Academy by actually one of our team members who's super creative, Valerie. She's amazing. We recognize that our facilitators needed kind of, you know, moments of self-care, of wellness. And so what Valerie did is, instead of, you know, inviting somebody in to lead a session, she gathers videos. And so she gathers videos where either at the beginning or at the end of the meeting, just helps everybody kind of walk through a little bit, even if it's just a couple of moments of wellness. And this is something you all can, you know, if you're not already doing it, you might want to consider it as a practice. And so, Rachel, if we can go to the next slide. And we're just going to do a really quick breathing exercise, just about 30 seconds. All right. Probably way too short, at least it's too short for me, but it just kind of gives you an example of there's so many resources available for free on YouTube, on this app, that are just guided for you. And again, you could just play it at the end or at the beginning of a meeting or at your desk. You hang up that phone, you've had a tough phone call, you need just that moment to regroup. You know, follow a video, do a little stretching as someone suggested. I don't think any of us get enough of that in a day. And then I just want to, Rachel, if I can quickly share my screen. I wasn't able to drop this one into the slides. Let me see if I can do this well, very quickly, and I know then we're going to wrap up. So one of the things another thing that this colleague, Valerie, does is she follows up the breathing or the wellness piece, which is the fun, silly video. Uh-oh, it looks like folks froze on my end. I don't know if you all can see this or not. Oh, no, looks like
We can't see it.
You can?
No.
Okay, for some reason. You cannot. Okay, I will send you the link. Yeah, you all froze up on my screen, so I probably am not able to show it. So apologies for that. But we will send it. And it's just, you know, a puppy video. This is an animal that I had never heard of. It's called a quokka. I don't know if you all have heard of it, but just a nice way to wrap up a meeting, just a moment of lightheartedness. I am going to try one more time because I might have gotten back to it. Can you all see it now? Yeah. Okay. This is 6 minutes long, so I'm not going to play the full thing, obviously, but I'll give you about a 20-second little taste of it. All right. Here we go.
Quokkas are the happiest animal on the internet. And they're a strange case of how social media tourism has actually helped a species thrive. Hi, I'm Danielle Dufault, and you're watching Animalogic. If you spend any time at all on the internet, you've likely seen the creature that has been crowned the world's happiest animal. Meet the quokka, a marsupial endemic to Australia that's about the size of a cat. Quokkas are wallabies, also known as short-tailed scrub wallabies. But quokka is much cuter. Male quokkas, fully grown, will be at most 4.5 kilos, while females will be at most 3.5. Quokkas live on an island off the western coast.
All right, we did not get enough of the quokkas, I admit. There's actually videos of them responding to juggling and all kinds of silly things. But again, just anything that kind of brings a little bit of joy to the day, something quick, something easy. I also wanted to share before our time is out is that we're going to do a follow-up. So recognizing Helen and Petra and the team invited us to do a follow-up on managing difficult conversations. So we'll be back with you in a few weeks to practice, you know, how do you handle it when you have those challenging calls? So we'll be going over the HERE technique, which is the technique we introduced several months ago, and then just kind of applying it, to the new reality where we're seeing folks experiencing and responding to pandemic response through these calls that are just getting a little more challenging as we go along. All right. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you all for your participation. Really, really appreciate it. And anybody has like a quick question or a quick comment before we go? Otherwise, I will hand it back to Helen.
Thank you so much, Patricia and Rachel. We really appreciate you and your team, and excited to see you again in April for our next follow-up training. Thank you all to our partners as well. Thank you for joining this call. I hope it was helpful. And we will be sending out the slides and the resources from Patricia in today's session. And then the last update I just want to give is that I did send out a survey through Curio that our office does have COVID test kits available. I know we talked about that at last month's meeting. And some folks are trying to get access to kits. So we do have a supply available. So if you would like, please fill out that survey so that we can get those to you. And that's it. Thank you all so much.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.